What's up, everybody? Welcome back for another video in the iOS interview questions series. Today we're going to be talking about classes versus structs. Now this is a pretty fundamental question, but I did get asked it quite a few times during phone screens. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the main differences between classes and structs, and then I'm going to give a few examples of when you should use one versus the other. All right, let's get to it. All right, here I am in my empty playground, but before we get into it, I do want to throw out a disclaimer that this classes versus structs and when you should use them is a very thorough discussion. If you just Google classes versus structs, and you'll see tons of long Stack Overflow discussions or blog posts or even like hour-long video talks. So just know that this can evolve into a very in-depth discussion, but we're going to keep this to what you need to know to answer interview questions. Now that that's out of the way, I want to talk about the one thing you absolutely have to take away from this video, if nothing else, one little nugget that you have to take away, is that classes are reference types and structs are value types. What does that even mean? All right, well, I'm going to show you. First, let me set the stage with a good analogy I thought of, or at least I think it's good anyway. So let's say you have a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. You have the file, and you want to email that file to a friend. When you email that file to a friend, if they open it up and they change all the numbers to whatever they want it to be, it doesn't matter because you sent them a copy. You still have your original spreadsheet. That's like a value type. Value types in Swift are passed around by copies. Whereas a reference type is kind of like if you had a Google Doc or a Google spreadsheet and you gave your friend access to change that. Now if they go in there and change all the numbers around, now your copy's messed up too. I mean, I know there's version history in Google Sheets, you can fix it, but stick with me here on this analogy. So again, when you pass a reference, that's like giving somebody access to your Google Sheet and they change everything, you're changing the original document as well. You're changing that reference to it. So again, classes are reference types, structs are value types, and now we're going to work up some code to really drive that point home. So first let me create just a random class. I'm going to fast forward some typing. So here's the very basic class called MacBook. MacBook has a year, MacBook has a color, and then here on lines 10 through 12, we're initializing a MacBook with a year and color. Basic stuff. Now let me illustrate what I mean when I say classes are reference types. So let's create a MacBook. Let's say let my MacBook equals, and then we'll initialize a MacBook here. And we'll say it's a 2016, and it's a space gray MacBook. Okay, so I have a variable that is my MacBook. It's a 2016 space gray. So here's what I mean by reference type. If we do let stolen MacBook equal my MacBook, so what I did there was I created a new variable called stolen MacBook and set it equal to my MacBook. Like somebody stole my MacBook and they said, yep, now it's mine. So on this new stolen MacBook variable, so stolen MacBook dot color, let's change that to, let's say the thief, spray painted it green. So spray painted green. They hate it. So now if I just do print my MacBook, which is the original MacBook on line 16, dot color, remember my MacBook was space gray. But if you look down here in the printout in the console at the bottom, it's spray painted green. So what happened, even though I set my MacBook to a new variable of stolen MacBook, and I changed the color on the stolen MacBook, it still changed the color on my original MacBook here on line 20. So that's what it means when you're passing a reference type. Again, using the analogy, this is like I gave somebody access to my Google spreadsheet and they changed all the numbers on it, and now it's affecting my original spreadsheet. So that's what I mean by reference type. Again, classes are passed by reference. So the flip side of that is the value type, which structs are. Structs are passed by value type. Let's code that up to really drive the point home. So I'm going to create a basic struct here, struct iPhone, and iPhone has a number, like iPhone 4, 5, 6, whatever, and iPhone also has a color, which is a string. Now if you notice up in the class, up here on line 10 through 13, I had to have this initializer. Structs, you don't actually have to have that. You can if you like, but it's not a requirement. So now let's try that stolen MacBook exercise with our iPhone. So let my iPhone equal, and we'll initialize an iPhone, and see, we get this autocomplete initializer without even designated that in the struct. So hit enter number, I have an iPhone 7, and the color is just black. So now let's see what happens when someone tries to steal my iPhone. So var stolen iPhone equals my iPhone. Again, just like somebody stole my phone, and now they want to make it their own color. So stolen iPhone dot color equals, they're a fan of the rose gold, so they wanted to make it rose gold. So now in the example of the my MacBook, which is a class, that changed the original color. Here we're going to see it's not going to change the original color. So if I print out my iPhone dot color, you'll see down here in the console, it's still black. Because what happened here on line 30 when we created the new stolen iPhone and set it equal to my iPhone, at this point right here, we created a copy of my iPhone and assigned it to stolen iPhone. Again, back to my analogy, up here, this is like I emailed my friend a copy of my iPhone, and he can do whatever he wants to do because it's just a copy, no big deal. So when he decides he wants that iPhone to be rose gold, I don't care. He's only changing his copy of the phone. I still have my original iPhone that's, black. So that illustrates structs being passed by a value type. Again, think of it as like you're emailing a file to somebody, you're passing them a copy. It's exactly what's going on when you're passing a value type. Okay, so like I said, that is the one thing you absolutely must know. If you don't know anything else, know that a class is passed by a reference type and a struct is passed by a value type, and understand what that means. That is the core of the answer. Now, obviously there's a lot of other stuff that goes along with that, but that is the absolute fundamental core of this answer. So now you might be wondering, well, when should I use a class? When should I use a struct? And with anything, it depends. One major benefit classes have is they can be subclassed. They have what's called inheritance. So let's say, for example, go ahead and make some space down here. You wanted to create your own custom crazy button. So you would create class, my custom button, and you want that to be a subclass of UI button. And the reason being is that you want your button to come with all the stuff a UI button has, all the methods attached to it, all the properties. You just want to add your own custom flair to it. In a situation like this where you just want to customize a little bit, but you want to keep all the properties of a UI button, this is when you would use a class, because classes have inheritance. A struct cannot have inheritance. Now the flip side to that, and the good thing for structs, is that they don't have inheritance. As you can imagine with this example on line 38, having all the inheritance of the UI button might be a lot of excessive bloat that you might not need. Now, of course, if you're creating a custom button, you need that bloat. But if you don't need all that inheritance, then you should use a struct. And you might often hear that structs are lightweight and clean, and the vast majority of that comes from not having any inheritance. And on that note of being lightweight and clean, that is why structs are considered to be better performant than classes. All right, so to sum things up, again, classes are passed by reference type. Structs are passed by value type. You can use my analogy if you want. Having a class is like giving somebody access to your Google Sheet and they can change anything. Having a struct is like emailing them a copy of an Excel spreadsheet. They can change anything they want, it doesn't matter, it's just a copy. And then remember, classes have inheritance, which could be vital if you're trying to create a custom object, but because a struct doesn't have that inheritance, that's what makes them lightweight and clean and a little better performant. And in general, you should use a class when you need all that inheritance, but if you just have a data structure, like here on line 23 to 27, you just have an iPhone, it just has a number and a color. That's the perfect scenario for a struct. All right, that's it. So now you should feel better about classes versus structs, and hopefully when you get this question, you'll crush it. All right, if you found this at all useful, go and hit subscribe. I got more videos in the series on the way.